Welcome to Homes for Hope's 25th anniversary celebration. It's so exciting to see people's names coming in the chat. Feel free to say who you are, where you're coming from. And we have a lot of great content to get to. But before we do so, I just wanted to take a minute to thank all of you who have partnered with us so faithfully over the years. Countless families around the world have broken the bonds of generational poverty in all its forms through your support and advocacy for this mission. And we are beyond grateful to serve alongside you. Thank you. And for those of you who are new to Homes for Hope or who are just curious and here to check things out, welcome. We're glad that you're here. There are many people on this call who would be happy to share about their experience with Homes for Hope, so please feel free to engage and ask any questions you may have. And speaking of asking questions, Kirsten, our phenomenal operations and marketing strategist, she'll be monitoring the chat throughout the event, so feel free to drop your thoughts and questions there at any time, and we will use them to facilitate our optional Q&A and networking time later on. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Our first expert is Jeff Shore, founder and president of Shore Consulting, Inc., a company specializing in field-tested and proven consumer psychology-based sales training programs. Jeff is a top-selling author and an award-winning keynote speaker, which I think will be obvious as you listen to him. Let's listen together to his best 5 minutes on what the building industry needs to hear right now.
Well, greetings. Jeff Shore here with you, and I'm so thrilled to be able to support this Homes for Hope event. Appreciate all that you do. And as I think about what we're dealing with right now in this new and adjusted market, I tend to think of things through the lens of the home buyer. And I think we all can appreciate the fact that it's a difficult time to be a home buyer right now. You feel like you're having to go up against market headwinds and people telling you that maybe this isn't such a great idea. But I think one of the really interesting and really challenging things if you're a home buyer today is to look at where you are today versus where you were a year ago or a year before that. And we can look at it and suggest that starting maybe 2015, 2016, the trust in the market began to accelerate quite a bit. People began to really trust that the market was going to reward them for their efforts in purchasing a home, and it was going to be safe to be able to do that. By the time we got to 2020 and 2021, in many markets around the United States, we found that there was so much trust in the market that people were walking through the door saying, "May I buy a home?" Salespeople were saying, well, do you want to know what homes we have? Not really. I just want to buy. The only way that that could happen, because I've certainly never seen anything like it in my 35 years in the industry, the only way something like that could happen would be because there's so much trust in the marketplace that there is a safety that takes place. I can do this, even though it might sound a little odd, a little bizarre, highly unusual behavior, but I can do this because the market is going to take care of me. The market is going to reward me. So there was this tremendous trust that was built up. Well, where are we today? Now, as I record this in 2022, where are we today? Well, that market trust has eroded substantially. There is a trust deficit in the market. Buyers are now looking at it and saying, oh, boy, not sure that I can really trust what's going on in the market, that if I buy here today, that this is going to pay off, that this is going to be a good thing for me. So what happens now? What do we do to make up for that? And I would argue here that the establishment of trust has never been more important as it relates to the communication that a customer has with a home builder and with home builder representatives. So whether that's a salesperson, somebody in the mortgage department, somebody in design, construction, warranty, whatever it happens to be, we have to ask ourselves the question, what are we doing now to accelerate trust? What are we doing here to try and bring that level of trust? Now, the reason that this is so very, very important is that there's a little cognitive shortcut at play, a psychological hack, if you will. And that psychological hack suggests that when we can really like somebody, then we tend to trust that person. There's an argument here about encouraging our people to be their kindest, best self, because there's a specific link between likability and trust. If I like you, I tend to trust you. This is how con men make their living. They get you to like them, and then they get you to trust them, and then they take advantage of you. Our difference here is one of motive, of course. But as we look at it from that perspective, that trust deficit is so significant that if we want to overcome that in a hurry, it begins by being our most likable self. Now, I know that sounds like sort of pithy advice. Be nice, everybody. But the fact of the matter is, it works, and it's important because of what happens next, a little psychological phenomenon called the halo effect. If I determine that I trust you early on, I will continue to trust you thereafter until you give me reason not to. The converse of that is also true. If I don't trust you early on because, say, I didn't like you all that much, then I will continue to not trust you until you can get me turned around, and that's difficult to do. If we want to be persuasive, and that is the name of the game in the market condition that we have right now, we need to persuade people to do that which is in their best interest. That correlation says I need to be my kindest, nicest self in order to be my most likable self, in order to be deemed trustworthy to the person that I'm talking to, in order to have that influence and that persuasion. So I just want to encourage all of you to look at it and ask the question, what's happening in those initial moments? What are we doing? Brainstorm the ways that we can be our best selves right out of the gate. It's the right way to live anyway, but it's particularly important when we're facing the trust deficit that our customers are seeing today. It sounds like silly advice. Be nice, but it works. Be your best self. Be your most trustworthy self. Be your most persuasive self. That is how we will earn the business in 2022 and beyond.
Thanks, Jeff. I love that advice. He said the establishment of trust has never been more important, and be your most trustworthy self. It reminds me of some advice I and a group of building industry friends heard on our most recent Homes for Hope trip from Elizabeth, an entrepreneur and businesswoman who owns a fashion and convenience store in the Dominican Republic in Santo Domingo, the capital. She stressed how important integrity is when running your own business. She said, you have to be committed in order to serve your customers and provide them with the best products at the most reasonable price. I love these trips because we get to ask the people that we serve for business advice, and they provide us with gold like that. If she doesn't have walk-in customers, she'll call people in her community and deliver what they need to them. She is definitely the kind of business owner I'd trust. She plans to use her next loan to finish the floor in her store. Elizabeth is the woman in the yellow shirt in this picture. Her loan officer is in the blue shirt. And that's her store behind them. So she plans to use her next loan to finish the floor in her store and replace her corrugated metal storefront there with glass so potential customers can see what she sells as they walk by. Well, now let's hear from our next expert, Kevin Oakley. Kevin is a managing partner at Do You Convert. He has over 18 years of experience running marketing and sales operations for home builders of all shapes, sizes, and areas of expertise. He too is a renowned speaker and author, and the host of the Market Proof Marketing podcast, on which I had the privilege of being a guest alongside our founder, Jeff Rutt, from whom we will hear later. So Kevin, what is your best 5 minutes on what the building industry needs to hear right now?
About 12 months ago, homebuilders were absolutely giddy about the fact that it seemed that salespeople were optional, model homes were optional, and even customers were optional. Certainly, we went too far to an extreme, and I had great concerns about that and shared a lot of my thoughts about the fact that buy online was not the solution to all of our problems because that just made transactions happen faster. But when people stop lining up to process transactions, it doesn't create demand. So I already had a feeling that we were too far in one direction. But now that things have gotten tougher, I'm concerned that the dinosaurs in our industry might try to pull us back to the Stone Age. What do I mean by that? I mean, again, no one cared about walk-in traffic a year ago. And I thought we were becoming more progressive as an industry. When I would hear owners say things like, oh yeah, Kevin, we don't need walk-in traffic like we used to. Web traffic is all we need. Then we take the best customers, we schedule appointments with our sales team, we convert those sales and we move on. Again, not allowing walk-in traffic is nothing that we ever recommended, not where I'm going with this. We took it to an unhealthy extreme. But now it's incredible whiplash to have owners and leaders constantly ask me, hey, Kevin, what about walk-in traffic? When is the walk-in traffic going to come back? Can you help me get more walk-in traffic? And they're certain that weekend directional signs and balloons and streamers and all that kind of stuff is what's necessary to help the all-important walk-in traffic return. How do we go from this extreme over here to this one over here? So we went to an unhealthy extreme in how we approached our customers and our processes. And one would hope that we would just moderate. But instead, what it seems like is that the dinosaurs in our industry are trying to pull us all back to the Stone Age. And so I just want to share some things that I think we have or should have learned from our last 2 years collective experience. And we should continue to meet the customer where they want to go and where they are right now. And we shouldn't revert to prehistoric thinking. The first is that appointments are more important than traffic. Sales are a function of appointments, which I call meaningful conversations around pricing that last for 15 minutes or longer. So a walk-in traffic unit can turn into an instant appointment if that occurs. We also, of course, have appointments scheduled from online sales teams all around the country. Over 50% of sales coming from those scheduled appointments still right now, according to the latest stats. But sales are a function of appointments, not traffic. And yet the majority of home building companies don't accurately track appointments from walk-in traffic or appointments that salespeople schedule or interact with on their own. That's a big miss. We understood that was true during the pandemic, but now a lot of people are trying to revert back to walk-in traffic or traffic being more important than an appointment, and that is not the case. The second is that content is more important than advertising, especially now as there are fewer people in the market for a home, new or used. The most important thing is to have all of the content that anyone who's in the market wants to absorb or needs to absorb in order to choose you over someone else. It's about gaining market share, not by out-shouting them. That we do need advertising to create attention and interest. But after that initial attention is created, content has to be there to create certainty, trust, and desire to move forward. The other great thing about content is the momentum around that can continue even after you stop investing in it. So if you think the next 6 to 12 months are going to be tougher, then I hope you've invested a lot in content so that even if you need to reduce your ad spend, the content can continue to deliver qualified leads and appointments to your sales team. The next one is being available on demand versus set hours. In 2008, 2009, when online sales became ubiquitous or began its journey to becoming ubiquitous around the country, it wasn't created as a position because there were so many leads that we had to figure out what to do with them from the web and from phone calls. It was because there weren't enough leads that this position was created to be as responsive as possible, to maximize every engagement, and to be available outside of traditional model home hours. We have to start thinking about that way again throughout the entire experience with our customers. Having a human being available who's knowledgeable to help and answer questions is a luxury experience today. And there is no other industry where you should still be able to have or maximize that human interaction like ours, because a new home is a luxury option compared to existing in any market. And finally, I want to stress intellectual honesty over distractions. Data is incredibly important because data can prevent the team from delusions that end up in disaster. What's an example of a delusion that you or your team might face? It goes something like, hey, traffic is really slow at Happy Acres, and we know traffic is what results in sales. So let's get a clown, a bounce house, and a cotton candy machine and see if we can increase traffic by luring people in to have a free carnival experience with their families. That is an example of the type of delusion that we don't need. Or if we just allowed people to hit a buy now button, that all of our other problems would be solved. So let's invest all of our time, energy, and resources into creating that tool. And yet no one's complaining about the lack of ability to do digital transactions as a primary cause of not getting sales today. When resources and time and money are limited, we have to be more focused than ever before, not less focused. If you focus on the fact that appointments are more important than traffic, content is more important than advertising, on-demand service is more important than business hours, and intellectual honesty is more important than distractions on your team's focus, I think you're going to have a fantastic 2023, regardless of what the market is, because you will steal market share from your competition. Thanks again to Homes for Hope for having me and the opportunity to speak to you, and I look forward to seeing your continued success.
Thanks, Kevin. Happy Acres sounds like a really nice place to live. I wonder if all the lot sizes are an acre large. Anyway, that's great advice. As he was referencing the pandemic and how it affected our industry leading up to even today, he said, meet the customer where they are and where they want to go. Well, that reminded me of Evelyn's story. Prior to the pandemic in Burundi, she and her husband supported their 9 children through growing and selling onions to people from the Democratic Republic of the Congo who would cross the border to shop at their local market. Well, when the borders closed due to COVID restrictions, their main source of income disappeared. She no longer had any walk-in traffic. Well, undeterred, Evelyn recognized the need to diversify her business through Hope Training, and she used a loan from Hope to start a piggery and purchase cows, chickens, and ducks. Evelyn then started making her own fertilizer to grow a wider variety of crops and began selling the fertilizer to others in her community so they could do the same. And then furthermore, she provided jobs for 5 other people in her community who take care of the animals and help run the fertilizer business, in addition to improving other people in her community's crops and product through her fertilizer. So in the face of severe obstacles, Evelyn changed her strategy in ways that improved on her former business model, met her customers' needs in better ways once the borders reopened, and provided jobs for others in her community. And her wise decisions are paying off. Her family is well taken care of. Well, lastly, let's sit in on an interview between Jeff Rutt, the founder and CEO of Keystone Custom Homes, and David Weekley, chairman of David Weekley Homes, as they reminisce about the early days of Hope International, Homes for Hope's parent organization.
To the cloud. Okay, David Weekley, welcome. We are so blessed to have you be a partner with Hope International through the years, and with your incredible success in the home building industry through the years, and your incredible success in coming alongside of many charities and helping them with their, not only their financial resources, but helping them on their boards with their wisdom. But just wanted to talk a little bit about, maybe give us a few comments on why you believe in supporting Hope International.
Well, first of all, thanks for setting this up and visiting with me. I've been fortunate to be involved with Hope for many years. I'm not sure exactly how many, 15. You might know.
Yeah,
but,
at least maybe 18.
Oh, okay, but you know, I first started getting involved in international philanthropy back, I guess, about 20 years ago. And as I went around to every continent around the world, I decided that Africa was the place that had the greatest need. And I love the concept that Hope has in terms of helping people help themselves and showing them how to fish rather than giving them a fish, so to speak. And the savings groups are very appealing to me, and having kind of communal groups get together and save together and start new businesses and support themselves. And I also really love the faith component of what Hope does. That's been a critical thing in my life. And you know, there are many great organizations out there, but finding a great organization that helps with people's livelihoods as well as helps in their faith journey is unusual. So I'm excited about Hope.
Yeah, thank you, David. So in the beginning, just reminiscing here a little bit, but about 18 years ago, when our president, Peter Greer, was still in a cubicle and we were very small, I remember being on the phone with you, and we were trying to connect with builders around the country, as we, up to that point, had supported Hope International a lot through Homes for Hope, and had read a lot about, I really didn't know you personally at that time, but had read a lot about your involvement in philanthropy and your extremely generous, just your process and your commitment to give such a large percentage of your income to charity. So I was thrilled to have you on the phone with me, but I could tell I was losing you, and you were busy, just like all of us. And I could tell the phone call was getting ready to end, and I hadn't got a commitment yet, but you mentioned something about after I was talking about Christ-centered microfinance, you had mentioned something about you were getting ready to do some things in Rwanda. And I remember saying, David, you got to hang on a second, because our new president, Peter Greer, is very familiar with Christ-centered microfinance in Rwanda. Hang on. And I went sprinting down the hallway, sliding into Peter's cubicle and said, pick up line 3, David Weekley. You got to talk to him right away. And Peter was like scrambling for the phone. And 45 minutes later, I think you guys were talking about maybe having Peter come to Houston to chat about the possibility of involvement. I don't know if you remember that conversation or some of those early days.
Well, I do remember the early days, and I remember having the opportunity to go to Rwanda with Peter and with a couple of my kids, and it was awesome. And we also went to Burundi on that trip, I believe. Yeah. But I've always liked to fund great leadership, and I saw in Peter Greer that he was young and spry and dedicated and willing to take risk like any good entrepreneur, and was a lifelong learner and a faithful man. And it's been a pleasure to support Hope, and specifically Peter's leadership for this last 18 years. And the thought that a builder actually founded an international nonprofit was pretty bizarre. And so Jeff, having the opportunity to support you as well in your efforts was encouraging for me to find someone who was so dedicated to it like you are.
Yeah, well, thank you, David. I just want to say thank you for the incredibly generous support financially that you've given to Hope International through the years, but probably as important or more important, I want to thank you for the love you've given Hope International through your constructive criticism, just in only the best way, but very direct, as we've grown from probably when you met with us, our budget was $300,000 or so, and now it's 35 million, and we have grown a lot, in part, and I would say in great part, because of folks like you who have said, we love you, here's what you are doing well, here's areas that you need to improve, and you've given us great wisdom, great constructive criticism directly to Peter, and he has hopefully accepted that and taken it in, at least some of it, and we felt like that's really benefited us. Talk a little bit about not only the involvement you've had like that with Hope, but also other charities through the years.
Well, I guess it was about 30 years ago that I committed to give half my time and half my earnings away each year, and I've been blessed to be able to do that. And half my time over 30 years is like 30,000 hours working with a variety of nonprofits. So I've made tons of mistakes over that time period. And like most people, I started out doing kind of domestic and philanthropy within my city. And over time, I found that there were already great folks that were helping out in the city, but there really weren't that many great folks that were working around the world in some of the toughest places, which is where Hope is. And I found out that my dollars could go a lot farther with Hope than they could in Houston, Texas, or in the United States. Yeah. And so it was a pleasure to get involved with Hope in that way. And my overall experience in nonprofits allowed me to help talk to Peter about fundraising, or talk to Peter about about staffing, or talk to Peter about how to weather downturns, or a lot of things that we've been through in business that sometimes some nonprofit leaders haven't been through.
Yeah. So it's, when you talk about the dollar going further, that's in some ways, it's all relative. We have poverty in Houston, we have it here in Lancaster, we have it in Chicago, and a lot of cities around the country, but the level is relative. Well,
and as we realize more and more that our neighbor really does include the entire world, and as I do that, if I really do want to help the least of these, so to speak, the place that I can do that and invest $100 or $1,000 or $100,000 and have the most impact, I have found it to be in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
So we're continuing to do that. We now have 3 staff members with our foundation located in sub-Saharan Africa. So, and they're of that area, so they really know the context. And I found it to be very rewarding and very impactful.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate it, David. And you mentioned that it's rare to have the combination of an efficient microfinance organization coupled with the spiritual impact. There's so many advantages of having the ability to come alongside families who are just looking to improve their tiny sneaker business. They may be like 2 Muslim women that we met in Kigali, Rwanda, who didn't want any. They weren't necessarily interested in the word and the worship part of our 5W welcome, worship, word, work, and wrap up. But after being involved with that group for a year, got loved in and came to Christ through that platform. So I know that's something that's of interest to you and seems like a very good way to reach the unreached.
Yeah, well, and I think that helping people take care of their physical needs is very much a part of our, faith paradigm.
Yeah.
And that, coming to faith, but still not being able to feed your family is not really getting the full job done.
It's really hard. It's really hard. Yes. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, David, thank you for your commitment to partnering with Hope International through the years on behalf of the thousands and tens of thousands of lives that you've impacted with your generosity and your thoughtful, just loving well on Hope International. We just want to say thank you. We're extremely grateful.
Well, and thank you for making the home building industry proud by being the only international nonprofit founder that I know of that has grown a nonprofit from startup to $35 million in annual revenue, especially from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and being a moderate sized builder. So it's inspiring, and I appreciate the opportunity to come alongside.
Well, thank you. Yeah, nobody more surprised than I am.
God works in mysterious ways.
That's right.
Well, what a privilege to be a part of such an incredible work. Thank you so much for attending today. Our hope in holding this event was simply to thank you for your partnership over the years, reconnect with you if it's been a while, and give you an overview of what our organization is all about for those of you who are new. Our Western and Eastern US reps, Drake and Stephen, who are on this call, they'll be reaching out to you to schedule follow-up meetings and with you and your teams individually. And they'd love to hear from you on what your experience has been like partnering with Homes for Hope or other organizations, what we've done well, what we could do better, and what partnership could potentially look like moving forward. We'd also love to see you in person at our booth if you'll be at IBS this year. And so thanks again for attending this event, and stay on the line for our Q&A and networking time if you'd like. So official content is now over. And I'd love to open things up now for our optional Q&A and networking time. So, Kirsten, have we received any questions over the course of our time together here?
Sorry, we have not received any questions. We would love to know if you guys have any questions. Our experts are here live with us. Yeah. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions as well.
I have a question. I have a question that either Jeff or Kevin could answer. Maybe, where are all the buyers?
They're still shopping. They're waiting to find those right people that they can trust and have some certainty about the future. I mean, it's interesting talking to so many different owners, and Jeff has the same experiences, I'm sure, of people saying, Craig just keeps showing up in our models. He's come back 7 times in 3 months. And those are the people that for the last 2 years, we would have just said, well, they're not real buyers. Don't waste your time with them. Right. So I'm actually surprised by the amount of stories that I hear on coaching calls where they'll say there are no buyers out there, Kevin. It's really hard. But then they'll tell me 7 individual stories and how the sales team is working with them or how we're going to try to get that person to purchase. I'm like, that's still a lot of stories that you're telling me. And it's that quick shift and adjustment that is so hard. So things are absolutely tough. I'm not saying they're not tough, but it feels even tougher than it actually is. One quick number, and this is not prepared, but I was on with a builder today, and they have 139 sales in for the month on a sales goal of 300. Okay, so that sounds pretty bad. I said, hey, take a look. What was your sales results in 2019? To the letter, 139 sales net. They still have 22 more that are pending sales that they think they're going to get this month. So if you look at that overall mean trajectory of just year by year by year by year growth, they're 5% behind, but it feels like they're 65% behind. And that's what makes it so tough for everyone, is the speed of the adjustment.
Yeah. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's true in life. It's also true for what our buyers go through. You know, when the circumstances change first, then your paradigm or the way you see the circumstances change next, and then the behavior follows after that. So, you know, if you've ever had some sort of trauma to your life, then you know your circumstances suddenly changed. Now you got to reorient. It takes a while to sort of get your feet on the ground and figure out what this new normal looks like. And then you can go on and make decisions and take actions. And I think that's what buyers are going through right now, that there is this crisis of confidence that's taken place because the world has changed so dramatically, so quickly. So now they're having to adjust their paradigm and say, is it normal now? I mean, quite frankly, I'm not sure that interest rates need to go down dramatically to see a boost. I think if they just stayed put for a while, we'd be okay, because people could say, okay, that's the new normal. We can get behind that and we can move into it. But with the dramatic amount of volatility, I think it's just that people still don't know what normal is. Once they know what normal is, they can lean into that. And I think this is the charge of sales professionals, quite frankly, is to give people that confidence that this is the new normal. And, you know, that rule number one, live in the right home. Above everything else, you got to live in the right home. Let's figure that part out first. Then we can deal with prices and interest rate and terms and, you know, what big builders are doing and everything else. But if you're not living in the right home, none of this matters.
Yeah, that's a good word. Looks like there's a couple questions in the chat there. Yeah, for whoever wants to jump in. Kevin, you want to talk about the content?
Sure. Yeah. So the question was, how do you encourage those that are not as comfortable with content creation to shift away from typical signage, balloons, flags, crazy events? Because we're all just certain that people just don't know we're there, right? That is if there is one cry from the sales team that I will never forget from the last downturn was, Kevin, people drive through my neighborhood all day, but they just won't stop. In fact, somewhere I need to go dig out a picture of Don Kolakowski in Bethel Park, who set out just a pop tent with a cooler full of beverages to try to convince people to stop. People just don't know we're here, or they need that excuse to stop. The hard part about encouraging, one is a question of, do you have the right people on the team who can make that content? Because even though we all have the capability to take amazing photos and videos that are better than they ever have been, doesn't mean that they have the ability to tell a story. So there's two big buckets of content. Real briefly, there's content that helps people make a purchasing decision. I call it actively shopping content. I want to compare this feature with that feature. I want to compare this home site with that one. We shop by comparison. So I need that detail to be able to shop and make a decision around some of the aspects of what I'm considering. Builders have more or less figured that part out over the last decade. Where we are still woefully lacking is storytelling content that goes beyond that makes you want to even get to the shopping portion. Hey, I'm just not a new home person. New homes are too complicated. New homes take forever. New homes are going to cause us to get divorced. You have to have stories to get people to even want to get into the shopping part. And then when you start talking about stories, and maybe half the people I'm talking to right now, they're like, oh, here's this arts and crafts guy going again. He's talking about stuff that doesn't really matter. Stories don't matter. Where the land is and what the price is, that's all that matters. And so that there's a leadership challenge where leaders, yeah, I'm going to stay in my own lane. But I have this joke. I'll say the joke. You can cut it out from the recording. Most of the leaders I interact with at the division president level or higher want absolutely nothing to do with salespeople. They hire a sales manager to keep salespeople as far away from them as possible because they just want to focus on all this other stuff. And so then when you talk sales is though at least an immediate results game or a more immediate results game. So when you start talking about marketing and content and storytelling, you're like, am I going to make money from this in like the next 30 days? Okay, I'm not sure I have patience for this. And so that's a leadership challenge around content. And then you have the actual tactical, how do we get the content created? And do we have a storyteller who can do more than just, I call document the crime scene. We don't need to document the crime scene. We need to tell a story about this luxury product that we offer.
I would just chime in here that I can't disagree with anything Kevin's. I rarely do disagree with anything that Kevin Oakley says, but I will say that I am still believing that the single greatest problem that plagues our market today are salespeople who undervalue the opportunity standing right in front of them right at this moment. And for the last 2 years, for sure, and even before that, really, when you look at 2015 to 2019. There was buyers that they carried the urgency through the door. They entertained the salespeople with stories of how much they needed to buy a home. It was really easy at that point. The sales job was difficult, but for different reasons. Now we've carried that same mentality from the COVID era into where we are today, and we are not valuing the person standing in front of us the way that we need to. We're still waiting for them to sort of entertain us and prove to us that they're real prospects. And to Kevin's point, I agree that when you think about something like video, personalized video, it shouldn't be cutting edge, but until people use it regularly, it still is. So if you look at it from this perspective, the moment that a customer leaves a community, a home, whatever it is, their emotional altitude starts to wane. And the purpose of follow-up is not to nag people and to say, well, now are you ready to buy? It's to sustain the emotional altitude. It's to keep that customer emotionally engaged for a long period of time. And so I think video is a perfect way to be able to do that. It's raw, it's real, it's fresh, it's organic. It takes 30 seconds and it costs you nothing. Show me anything that's falls under the category of effective marketing at no cost. I'd like to know what it is. But again, until people are regularly using it, it's still cutting edge.
Yeah. I want to echo that part that Jeff just talked about of it is the opportunity right in front of you. Any lead that has come across our organizations since, you could argue, July knows what the prices are and more or less knows what the rates are. And so you can't look at anyone from July and say those people are no longer in the market or they're no longer interested. And when I look at my less informed sales minded at the data in front of me, I'm just like, can you please call Jeff Shore and his team and figure out how to ask good questions? So here's what we see from online leads is that home available? No, I sold it yesterday. Okay, thanks, bye. Hey, that promotion, how does that work? Here's how it works. And then 3 days later, would you like to come in and learn more about how it works? But we're answering questions so directly because of the habit we got into of we've got to keep going faster because there's all these people waiting for us in our time. So let's give the answer as fast and directly as possible. And that, as a marketer, drives me crazy because we all know how hard it is to get those leads to show up in the first place. And then we're still acting like they need to prove again that they're worth our time.
One last thing.
By being interested in
them,
right, Jeff? We just have to be interested.
You'll love this story, Kevin. I was just talking to a VP of sales yesterday, took over a division where the salespeople had said, we don't need an online counselor. We'll handle all the online leads. Thank you very much. We'll handle them. Well, later that day, he called one of his salespeople only to find that their mailbox was full. So they're trying to send all the leads directly to the salespeople, and the leads can't even reach the salespeople because the mailbox is full. I mean, it's just like this. It goes full circle stuff.
It goes full circle to what I said before, though. Do you know why? It's not the reason why it was send it straight to the sales team is because of my theory that the leader of that organization said, sales manager's grumpy at me because salespeople are grumpy at the sales manager, that they don't have enough opportunities. So just send them the opportunities straight ahead. And that's just like, get them out of my office so I can figure out how we can get cheaper land and framers to show up, because that's what I really want to focus my time on. That was fun.
Yeah, I'm looking at the question here from Matt. What do people who got into sales in the last 3 years need to know, do, and learn? Look, it's going to come down to one thing, I think, more than anything else. And that is, you're going to have to decide, are you more concerned about what your customer is moving to or what they're coming from? And I think the overwhelming majority of salespeople, not just in our industry, but in most industries, have got into this idea of, what are you looking for? How many bedrooms? What features? What's your price point? What's your time frame? Until you figure out their story, none of that matters. You gotta, we're not particularly good as an industry of figuring out, why are you standing here in the first place? What problem needs to be solved? It's almost like, if to put it in Homes for Hope language, it would be going to somebody who's saying, I need a little help here with my little startup business. I need some microfinancing, those things, and only figuring out what they want to use the money for without having any sense whatsoever as to what got them into this place. You have to understand the background of their story and of their life, and why this is so important to them and to the people that they serve. We spend so much time trying to think into the future that we forget that there was a past that happened that got us to this point. And I mean, if I want to put on my pastor's hat here and get deeply theological, it's like, don't tell me that the Old Testament isn't relevant. I'll leave it at that.
The other question was, have any of the builders used this lull period to analyze their entire sales process and come out of the recession stronger? My sense is that we're still in phase one. So, Jeff, you talked about this in your 5 minutes, but I've just kind of outlined this thing I'm writing of. I think there's 4 phases to going through a tough market, going back to my own experience in 07, 08, and 09. And phase one is a realization that times are tough, but we're still keeping our ostrich head in the sand and trying to solve those tough problems with things that are not correlated. That was my intellectual honesty part. And so I don't think most people are trying, if they are analyzing their sales processes and strategies, they're still looking at it in the lens of that story Jeff told about, hey, let's just send the lead straight to the salespeople to make the noise go away, not to actually solve the root issue, but to make the noise go away, unfortunately. But I think by Q2, we'll be in phase 2. Most organizations in phase 2, yeah.
We have about 5 minutes left. We want to make sure we honor your time. 25 minutes of content, 25 minutes of Q&A and networking to celebrate 25 years. So if you have any burning questions, we have about 5 minutes to get to them before we will wrap up.
Well, if I can just say thank you to all, Jeff, Kevin, everyone on the call here. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your incredible input into the industry, and to come alongside of Homes for Hope as we build dream homes and invest in the dreams of the families we serve around the world. My one comment to kind of tag onto yours, Kevin, as far as coming out of this, I feel like part of this that we're going through right now is started in March of 2020. Kind of the world as the way we relate with our potential home buyer completely got turned upside down. And if we didn't, as organizations, learn from that, going through that period, if we, as you termed it, just stuck our head in the sand, then we didn't propel ourselves forward. I do think a lot of organizations retooled during that, what was that thing called, COVID. During that period, becoming more in tune with communicating virtually and making sure that there was a lot of attention focused on understanding the customer. So yeah, and now we're in a different phase, but I think a lot of the things we've learned over the last couple of years are really, really important. And Jeff, I know our team has benefited from a lot from your training and a lot of tell me more. understand current dissatisfaction and future promise, and cost and fear. Definitely, it makes a lot of sense, and we appreciate that. Appreciate you guys supporting Hope International through Homes for Hope, and we got a chance to see a couple of the client stories today. I would just invite anyone on the call here who hasn't been to the front line, hasn't seen some of our work in Dominican Republic or one of the other 20 countries that we work in. I'd love to invite you to come along on a trip. There's a bunch of us going in February, and there's several other trips planned this year. So talk to Matt, Drake, Stephen, follow up with these guys, and join a trip. Get involved in a savings simulation that you can do over lunch in your office. Learn more about how we restore dignity in the lives of the families we serve around the world.
Yeah, October 11th through 14th is the Homes for Hope trip to the Dominican Republic. So we'd love for you to join us. Jeff, or Peter, who's on the call as well. In the last 3 minutes, there might be some people on this call who might not realize that we got our start in Ukraine, and we have a lot of love for that country. So would either of you be willing to give an update on Ukraine, what's happening, how our staff and people that we're serving are doing, and what God is doing through those people?
Peter, are you available to talk? Jump in.
Jeff, it's so funny to relive the conversation with David Weekley about Rwanda. I am just pulling into Newark International Airport, about to head to Rwanda. So I will give you the honor, Jeff, of giving the Ukraine update. Just such incredible community here that we are so grateful for. So thank you, Homes for Hope. But Jeff, probably best as I'm literally pulling into the airport here.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks, Peter. And thank you, Peter, for leading so well over the last 18 years. Talk about an incredibly hungry, humble, smart leader who somehow we convinced on his way from Harvard to a job at the World Bank that Lancaster, Pennsylvania was the place to be, and has grown the organization tremendously over the last 18 years. But we started in Ukraine 25 years ago. Very, very small. I was a toxic charity addict, sending containers of food and medical supplies to Ukraine. Had to be admonished by a pastor to say, your helping is hurting. And sent us on a journey to discover Christ-centered microfinance. And God is working in Ukraine right now, more than I've seen him work in 25 years. Our clients who we pray with weekly are extremely open to the gospel and discipleship. We are starting to give loans out again. I'll finish with one client story of a farmer in Western Ukraine who we just gave a loan to here over the past few months. And he's a wheat farmer, and he received a small loan to get his wheat in the ground. His fertilizer was more expensive than ever, wheat seed more expensive than ever, his fuel more expensive than ever, his pesticide, herbicides, everything was, as you can imagine, with inflation in a country that's at war. But he said, you know what? I'm going to use the talents and skills and opportunities that God put in my hands to support my fellow countrymen, to, even if my combine gets blown up by a landmine, or my wheat never makes it out of the port, I'm going to do whatever I can do and do my part, because you know what? Here's what he said: hope dies last. Hope dies last. Not Hope International, but hope. And his son is a police officer and got called up to be in the Ukrainian army. And his hope is that he'll survive. He has hope in eternity. He has hope that Ukraine will be at peace again someday soon, and that the difference that he's making with that small loan to grow wheat is going to make a difference for his fellow countrymen, even all across the country. So thank you for your involvement. In part, all of you have in some way been a part of supporting that farmer in Western Ukraine who is hanging on the hope and proclaiming that hope dies last. So again, thanks everyone. Really appreciate your time. And here we go. Let's keep investing in dreams of the families we serve around the world.
Absolutely. Jeff, one other thing I love about that story of that client you told from Ukraine, when asked if he would take another loan from Hope, he said, no, when this war is over, I will be the one who is helping my countrymen.
Yeah.
You know, so I just love that spirit and that resilience. And yeah, it's an amazing privilege to be a part of this. So again, thank you so much for attending today. We will follow up with you soon, and have a great Christmas and New Year's and whatever it is that you celebrate. Have a great
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.